let me just be super clear about this, just so you can know what you're in for. I'm a very needy speaker. And so the first thing that I need is some participation from you folks. That's what I'm talking about. So if you can take your hands, rub them together for me real quick, like this. Just trust me on this one. I want to hear the sound. Even if you didn't use hand lotion today, the rougher the better. Okay, and then on my count, on a count of 3, we're going to do one giant clap all together. All right, you ready? 1, 2, 3. Didn't that feel good? Didn't that feel good? I call that the thunderclap. I like to get our bodies moving and just getting involved. So my name is Mark Thompson. The internet thinks my name is Mark Texan. And so I've decided to just go with it as my stage name. And I'm a senior developer relations engineer at Google. But I got to tell you something. So I sort of, kind of work on the Angular team. Right? The Angular team, like who, honestly, does this guy know where he is? Who let the web guy in here? Not only am I presenting at one mobile conference, there are actually 2 mobile conferences going on, and I'm in here to talk to you about the web. But I promise you that this is totally worth your time. All right, anyone ever been to flutter.dev? You have, right? You've been there before. You love this website. So many of you already know me, and you don't even realize that you do. If you go to flutter.dev, and then you go to what I think is the best section, the trusted by many section, wait a minute, enhance. Enhance again. Yeah, that's me at Flutter Interact way back in 2019, I believe, or 2018, one of those two, right? It's actually 2019, yeah. That's me in the front row watching myself on the big screen because I was included in one of the keynotes because I started my Google journey as a Flutter developer. And thank you. See, somebody's excited about that. I'm excited about that. So here's what happened. I was actually building a mobile app for a startup that I started, and it just didn't go anywhere. Like, my app went like, no installs. But I learned a ton. You know what else I learned? I learned that the Flutter community is absolutely fantastic, a top-tier community that I still to this day wonder how they did it. How did they get so many people to be so passionate about this technology? And how did they get them to all be so kind and so supportive to each other? It's a really fantastic thing that I think you all should be very proud of. You should give yourselves a round of applause. Go ahead. It's a round of applause. Yeah. Here's something else you don't know about me. Besides that I work on the Angular team and I'm a web developer, I also can predict the future. Look at the date of this tweet, July 18th, 2020. I was about 2 weeks into my job at Google. And when asked how to spin up a new side project, I said Flutter plus Angular or nothing. So I knew I was going to give this talk way back in 2020, 3 years ago. See, that's how magical this whole thing is. I predicted this. Okay, honestly, I didn't know that this was going to happen, that Flutter Web was going to be what it is, but I like to believe that that's how it goes. So, welcome to my talk, Building Powerful Application Experiences with Flutter Web and Angular. So, let's talk about Flutter Web a bit. Raise your hand if you've used Flutter Web at all. Let me see a show of hands. Okay, so then you know how Flutter Web was prior to this latest release. If you brought Flutter Web into a website, that's all it was. There was no integration path. Unless you used something like an iframe or some other hack, it was all Flutter or nothing. But the team, which lots and lots of credit to them, have come up with so many nice API changes and other things to just smooth out the integration to the point where even myself, as a web developer, I say, Flutter Web is good now. I think you can use it to create really good stuff. But let's explore this path. So if I'm saying that Flutter Web is so good now and that even as a web developer, I would recommend it, does that mean that all other frameworks are toast? Like you should just toss everything off into the bin and just be done with it? Is it all rubbish? Well, I don't think that's the full story. I think there's more that we can explore. Okay, because of this idea that there is power in collaboration. Now, in your development journeys, think about how you write software. Very rarely do you write software with a unified set of tools that are the same, like homogeneous, through the whole stack. When I was a Java developer, long before I started with the web, I would write some code on the front end with jQuery and JavaScript and HTML, but on the back end, I used Java, Enterprise Java Beans. I was using Spring. I was using Hibernate. So I was looking at different tools to create a system that did what? That served my users the best. And then there's this really beautiful power when you can take tools that may be diverse in terms of how they work and put them together to create something fantastic. And that's what I'm going to ask of you to think about when you're thinking about how does this story play out with Flutter and Angular. And the natural question, some of you are in here just to find out this question. Why Angular in the first place? Like, why this technology when we already have Flutter Web? Why would I even consider Angular? Let's talk about it. This is why we consider Angular. Come on. Okay, no, seriously. It's because Angular comes with this promise that we want to enable you to deliver web apps with confidence. But what does that mean? Okay, here are the few points about how we help you to deliver web apps with confidence. First and foremost, we like to move your apps forward. As a Flutter developer right now, you are used to world-class tooling. Your tooling is fantastic in Flutter. One of the things that I always tell people that I admire the most about the platform is how good the tools are. Angular also likes to live in the same space with world-class tooling. We release a new version every 6 months. And we don't do things where we say, okay, we'll release a new version when we get a new feature. We do it timed. Whatever's ready at that 6-month mark is when we release it. But we bring the community with us. So our tooling, a lot of times when we release a new feature, we deliver migrations to go with, when I said defer to after my talk. Okay. None of my Google friends here, please don't report me. Okay. So we help you migrate. So we deliver migrations to help you move your applications one piece at a time when you're ready. That is a part of the Angular story. So we don't break our users. Sometimes it happens, but it's very rare that we break our users because of the way we migrate you one part at a time. Then there's something that I'm sure all of you are familiar with, the power of the community. Angular has a vast community that has supported the platform with their own packages and their own tooling. The same way you have pub.dev, Angular is an open source project, and folks are building things for Angular, and we get to leverage the power of this amazing support that we get. And then here's the thing that makes Angular special and why we help you deliver with confidence. We test inside and outside of Google. There are thousands of Angular apps in Google that are using the same version of Angular at the same time. We don't split across one app uses 15, one app uses 16. When 16 is out, all apps use 16. When 17 comes out, all apps use version 17. So what does that mean for us? That we cannot break people. We cannot break and maintain thousands of internal applications that use that use Angular at Google. So how does that translate? That means for you as developers, you get the confidence that we have already vetted these changes internally on production apps that people all around the world use. So let's talk a little bit about Angular from a development point of view. Okay, let's get familiar with it. Has anyone here used Angular recently? Okay, look at y'all. Hey, thank you. I appreciate that energy. Yeah, but if you haven't, that's okay, because we're going to get familiar with it, and we're going to see the integration and how you get where you're going. So the basic fundamental building block in Flutter is a what? Nice and loud, friends. A widget. That's right. Everything's a widget, right? Well, in Angular, everything's not a component, but that is our fundamental building block for your applications, and especially for your user interface. And when we make components, there are 3 parts. There's TypeScript for your business logic. There's HTML for your templates, so we just use the HTML spec. Whatever's available there is available in your application. And then we use CSS. for your styling of your component. Again, whatever is available in the CSS spec, you can use in your application. All right, so here is an example of an Angular component. First and foremost, how do I find this component when I'm using it in a template? How do I identify it? Well, you pass it your selector, and we have app-root as our selector. Then here's a template. We can do inline templates, so kind of like this. I know Flutter developers love to really have all your widget and UI code just kind of nicely in line with in your applications. You can do very similar in Angular where it makes sense. So for smaller templates, you just do an inline template. And this inline template, just a paragraph tag and some text. And then finally, we have an array for all the styles that you want to apply. And then we also have the application component class, which gives us the ability to write our business logic. Then in an application, here's what we do. We just drop in the app root tag, and then you're off to the races. Then you can just start using Angular in your application. And this is what that component renders when it's put to the screen. I like that. Someone's like, yeah, that makes sense. All right. Here's what's interesting about Flutter. If you want your UI to change, you have to call this method, setState. If the data has changed in your application and you want it to be reflected in the UI, you got to call setState. So what does Angular do? Well, we use something called zones. Because we got this idea actually from Dart, this idea of a zone. Here's how we wanted to use a zone in Angular. We thought, well, a zone can pick up the changes in your application. So you include a zone in Angular, it's by default. You don't have to call setState. You don't have to call anything. The zone will figure out that something changed. If an asynchronous call comes back, the zone will pick it up. If a user clicked on a button, the zone will pick it up. If you change the value of one of your properties of your class, the zone will pick it up. And doesn't that sound nice? Right? It's like nothing to do. You just start writing code. And it does sound nice, but it doesn't work at scale. So what we found is that at scale, zones actually become problematic for large-scale applications. So that's why I said thanks for nothing, Dart, because we like the idea. It just didn't work for us. So here's what we're going to do now. We're going to introduce an API called signals. Now, a signal is like a container, like a variable that holds a value. But here's where things get awesome. Inside of a signal, it knows where it's been used in the application. And more importantly, it knows when the value has changed, and it can notify any place where it's being used. Now, other frameworks use this as well, so this is not a pattern that we've created, it's a pattern that we're implementing for Angular. Let me show you how this works. Here's a similar component. We saw the parts already about what the selector does and the template, but in the class, we have 3 properties in this class: first name, last name, and full name. First and last name are signals, meaning they're a container that holds a value. The first name signal holds which value? Can somebody guess? Yeah, hey, that's me. Yeah, it holds Mark. That's the value that it holds. So if the value for Mark changes, any place first name is used, the application will be notified. Same thing for last name. But here's where things get even more interesting. Full name isn't a signal the same way the other two are, but why not? Well, full name is actually a computed value, meaning that it's derived off of other values. So think about a temperature conversion. In the US, we use Fahrenheit. But you can calculate Celsius at any point if you have one of the values and vice versa. So why would you create another variable to hold Celsius and Fahrenheit? You might say, if I have one, I can get the other. And that's what a computer essentially gives you. If you have other values that you care about when they changed, the computed will get the most recent value, which is a really nice feature. And then in our template, we just use the value. And now Angular, there's no need for zones to be involved here. And this gives us a lot of fine-grained control over when the application updates happen. Because the problem we ran into with zones is so many updates happen that this process called change detection, where we literally detect which changes happen in the application, that's very time-consuming and costly. And the more that it runs, the worse performance that you end up with. So now this allows us to say, well, if nothing has changed, then don't make any changes to your UI. So you get a much nicer and very performant user interface. So this is what we end up with when we render that same template to the screen. All right, friends. Again, so why Angular then? Still, why Angular? You have all these things that I just talked about, but that may not be interesting to you. You still say, well, Mark, okay, cool. You could have made this talk about anything. So is it the animations that make Angular special? Or, I'm sorry, not make Angular special, but make Flutter special, right? Because you can do animations in Flutter. Well, let me show you what else you can do. Let me just show you. All right. This is not a Flutter animation. This is a web animation, just using Canvas in less than 100 lines of code. And a lot of those lines of code are just me like declaring variables, right? But well, most of it is just a calculation. You might see something like this and think, if I want to create something beautiful like this, I got to use Flutter on the web. But that's not the story. That's not the value proposition. So I don't think it's the animations. That's not it. But then you might say, okay, oh, that was my backup, just in case I didn't have internet. Hold on. All right, is it reactivity? Because set state is very convenient. When you look at a Flutter application and you see set state, it is predictable what's going to happen. And that gives you a lot of readability and maintainability in your code. But as I just talked about with the Signals API, you kind of get that same value as well. You kind of know when things are going to happen. So it's not really reactivity. Is it screen sizes? Because Flutter is great with screen sizes. Is that the thing you can do? Well, no, because the web already has responsive web. That already exists for you. You can do viewport configurations. You can use flexible layouts with Flex Layout. You can use grid. You can use media queries and UI breakpoints. So if that's not the value prop, then what is it? It's the power and collaboration. It's what you can do together. It's what you can do together that makes all of this very exciting. Because Flutter's superpower, in my opinion, is the portability. The fact that Flutter is literally everywhere. You can use Flutter everywhere that you want to. You can use it where? Mobile, you can use it on desktop, you can use it embedded, but you can also use it in the web, which is what we care about today. And some of you are like, man, get to the integration, let's go. I got you. But there are two things about Flutter Web that you kind of have to deal with. You got bundle size and then SEO. Bundle size, right now it's a little bit heavy on the startup. If you think about users who have slow internet connections, that can kind of like damage the user experience, right? And that's not a knock on Flutter, that's just what the current state is. And then SEO is a little hard. But SEO with single page applications is also hard because the web crawlers can't figure out what to index. So what do? Well, here's, again, power and collaboration. If you're using Angular and Flutter Web together, you can use some of Angular's new server-side rendering support. So what happens with server-side rendering? So one, you can pre-render certain pages. So maybe there's a home page that makes a lot of sense to pre-render. Maybe there's an about page. Maybe there's some other parts of your application that you can pre-render that already exists, that the data doesn't change. Then you can also render your dynamic pages on the server, meaning someone makes a request for your application, and then we render the HTML and the DOM structure and send it out to the person who requested it. So you get the value there. And then and with the improved hydration is this idea that when I do send the HTML structure to the DOM, how do we make sure that we attach the events, make sure all the data's there, make sure everything is ready for the user to work? Well, we've improved a lot of that, so the time to interact is even faster. So what you can do here, think about this. Think about using your Angular plus Flutter app, having server-side rendering to help with some of that SEO, and then we're going to be doing deferred loading of individual components on a screen very soon with Angular. Now imagine what that can unlock for you. If you could have a really cool Flutter widget that you want to be available on the web, and you can defer the loading until it's needed and still get that very fast response from the pre-rendered content and the server-side render content, then you create this really dynamic user experience because the users are what matter. It doesn't matter how beautiful your application is if the users can't use it. The average user does not wait for your application to load. As much as you want them to, they won't wait. If it's slow, they will just navigate away from the page. So let's talk about the magic of element embedding. We talked about how before, Flutter would just monopolize the whole page. You couldn't do anything with any other tools. Now you can attach a Flutter app to an actual element on the page. And then you can communicate back and forth with element embedding. All right, the moment the streets have been waiting for. Let's look at this app demo. That's now y'all happy. Unbelievable. I guess I am at a tech conference, so that's fine. All right, this is an app that I co-created with one of the Flutter engineers, David. You can find this app in the Flutter sample on GitHub, so you can go there, you can check it out using Angular and Flutter. So what this app demonstrates is the ability to have this Flutter widget. I saw that too, don't worry about it. You didn't see anything. Hold on. All right, let's see, can we get you in here? All right, can I type anything? Maybe not. All right, so on the left-hand side, and this is all Angular code. This is actually even using some Angular packages like Angular Material. So we have Angular code as the frame of the application, but this is actually a Flutter app that was built for this demo, and I'm communicating back and forth. And because this Flutter app is attached to a regular HTML DOM element, I can apply things like a shadow, so styling, and I can do things like mirror or spin it. All those things just kind of work. Why? Because it's HTML, right? And that's why I love what they've done on the Flutter team with this API, because now we can do some very interactive things. And most important, we can communicate back and forth. We can send data back and forth between the parts of the application, which means this. Right now, this is a text field, but imagine that you have a complicated, finely tuned widget that you've built for a business use case, and you want to use it on the web and in your mobile app. Yes, you can figure out some type of way to do some conversion between Dart, JavaScript, and try to convert it to TypeScript, have some like complicated pipeline. You could figure that stuff out, but what's better than having the code that's already written, already ready in the places that you need it? And that's where Flutter's portability comes into play and gives you a lot of value. So now we could have any widget here, right? And that works super well. But how did we do this? How did we make this happen? Let's look at some of this code. Okay, 2 very important packages that bring your dreams to reality, JS Dart and JS Util. They give you some annotations and some functions that bring the the integration together. Now, Flutter code. Anytime there's Flutter code, I want to have a little F in the lower corner of the screen. Anytime there's Angular code, I have a little A, so that way we can know which parts are which. Because honestly, it all starts to look the same because both languages are typed. So you might be like, wait, which one is this? So this is on the Flutter side. Your favorite function for a stateful widget, init state, we have the demo app state manager. Now, for this example, we're doing some value notifiers, but that's just for this example. There is no requirement that you use value notifiers, but we're passing in some value notifiers for the screen, counter, and text, okay? Then, this is from the JS Util package, create Dart export. So I'm taking the state and serializing it and making it available. Then from there, I do broadcast app event. Now, broadcast app event is just a custom function that we use to be able to broadcast the specific custom event that Flutter is initialized. And then here's the event data. All right, if you want to see the implementation details for anything that I'm showing, just go to Flutter samples on GitHub, and then you'll be able to see all of this code in detail, and you can dive even deeper. So I've tagged the demo app state manager with JS export, saying that whatever's in this class is going to be exported and available. So if it's here, I can use it across the wire when we get to the website, right, into the Angular side. I can use it from there. So that's the most important part. You got to have the annotation. You can annotate at the class level, or you can annotate at the property and method level. So you may not want everything to be exported, or maybe you will. But for this example, this is at the high level, okay, just at the class level. Now, we're on the Angular side. We're in our HTML template. We have a custom component called ng Flutter, and it's just a wrapper, right? It's so that way we set up the configuration once, and then you can reuse it multiple places. All right, so it's just a custom component for us. And then here are the interesting parts. You need to know where your entry point is. What part of your Flutter application will you enter through? Okay, it's in main.dart. Where can you find your assets? /Flutter. And then this part is really interesting. The parentheses app loaded. That syntax may look a little foreign because that is actually event binding in Angular. So when the ng Flutter component fires an event called app loaded, which it will, and I'll show you that event, when that event is fired, then we're going to call a method called onFlutterAppLoaded that you implement. So that's my event handler. So on the left-hand side is the event. On the right-hand side is the event handler. All right, friends. Now, still more Angular code. This _Flutter object, this is in the global namespace for now as we try to figure out better patterns to be able to expose it. Right now, we call it's in the global namespace for your window object. Okay, so you have _Flutter, and then you have your load entry point function. So this is where you can handle the entry point. Remember I showed you that, oh, what's the entry point? And it had the src attribute. See, this is where we're going to be using it for the entry point to pass into the Flutter code. And then we have a function that allows us to just bootstrap our application. Okay, so once we pass this in and we get our reference back to the app runner, then we can do .run app. Does that run app look familiar to you? You ever seen that before? Right, that's from your Flutter code because this is a reference to our Flutter application on the web. All right, fantastic. Now, remember that custom event I told you, broadcast event, Flutter-initialized? We're still on the Angular side, but now we listen to that, and then we can emit a value that we got back, which ends up being what? The Flutter state that was serialized and passed over. So now we have a reference to it, and now the party is completely started. Now we have everything that we need to integrate with our application. We can communicate back and forth. Whatever is on that state, if there's a function or a variable, sorry, a function or a property, I can call it now. I can get involved with it. So we're ready. And now we can do things like this. Again, on the Angular side, just a function. Remember when I was clicking that button and it didn't work? Well, it was supposed to work, and then it was supposed to increment the counter. All right? And then you can do flutter.flutterstate.setClicks, right? And that setClicks is from the Flutter state. What I just walked you through is the ability to leverage the power of both platforms, right? Sometimes Flutter Web as an entire web app is the right solution for you. Sometimes it is the best way for you to go, and that is totally fine. Sometimes only Angular is the best way for you to go, but sometimes leveraging the power of both platforms and creating something really special is the right way to go. Be engineers, be the same engineers that you've always been. Think about how to solve a problem and not be focused on the specific tools. One of the phrases that my dad used to tell me all the time, he said, to a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So you can't see how else you can solve everything if you only have one tool that you are fixated on. I'm saying be an engineer that you already are and think about your toolbox. Think about all the things available to you and then build fantastic applications. So this is not the right framing when you're thinking about your solution stack. That's not the right framing. Angular versus Flutter, Svelte versus Angular, whatever versus whatever. That's not the right framing for you. Forget all that. You're much smarter than that. You're much more capable than that. I think this is better. Yeah, I like that. Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. That's so nice of you. Oh, my gosh. All right, friends. Well, my name is Mark Thompson. It has been an honor to talk with you and spend time with you. And I just want to encourage you to go build great apps. Enjoy the conference.